My mom left my dad when he got cancer. 2 years later, she wanted to come back, but it was too late. It all began 2 years ago. My father, Jack, suddenly fell ill. At first, we thought it was just fatigue, but the diagnosis turned out to be much worse. Stage 3 pancreatic cancer. In an instant, our world turned upside down. I'll never forget the expression on my mother's face that day. She looked exhausted, frightened. I didn't pay much attention to it then. How wrong I was. A week after Dad's treatment began, I came home to find him alone, holding a note in his hands. Mom had left. The note contained just a few words. "I can't take it anymore. Forgive me." I was shocked. Mom had never complained about problems or stress. She always seemed strong, unshakable. How could she just leave when Dad needed her so much? I didn't understand, and to be honest, I didn't want to understand. There was no time for contemplation. Dad needed support, and I decided I would do everything possible to help him overcome this disease. But it turned out to be more difficult than I thought. I had my own family, a job that demanded a lot of time. I was torn between home, the hospital, and the office. And that's when Sarah unexpectedly appeared. Sarah lived next door. She saw how I was rushing around and one day simply offered her help. At first, I refused. I didn't want to burden a stranger with our problems. But Sarah insisted. "I see how hard it is for you," she said. "Let me help, even if just a little." And so, when I was delayed at work, Sarah would visit Dad. She brought food, helped around the house, just talked to him. Her kindness became a ray of light in our darkness. The next year was the hardest in our lives. Chemotherapy, constant tests, sleepless nights. But we held on. And finally, the long-awaited words from the doctor: "The cancer has retreated." Dad and I cried with happiness. It seemed the worst was behind us. But fate had another surprise in store for us. A few months after Dad's recovery, I noticed how he had changed. He started looking better, smiling more often. At first, I thought it was just joy from overcoming the disease. But then I realized the reason was Sarah. There was clearly something going on between them. I didn't know how to feel about it. On one hand, I was glad to see Dad happy. On the other, what if Mom wanted to come back? And then one evening, there was a knock at the door. I opened it and froze. Mom was standing on the threshold. She looked tired but determined. "I know everything," she said. "I know your father has recovered and that he now has someone else." It turned out our talkative neighbor, Mrs. Johnson, had accidentally met Mom at the supermarket and told her everything. Mom was crying, telling how sorry she was about what she'd done, how she wanted to come back earlier but was afraid it was too late. She talked about stress at work, about how fatigue had accumulated over the years. I listened and couldn't believe it. Why had she never talked about this before? I called Dad. When he saw Mom, a whole range of emotions flashed across his face. They talked privately for a long time. I heard raised voices at times, then quiet crying. Finally, they came out. Dad looked exhausted but calm. Mom was crying. "Son," Dad said, "I've forgiven your mother. I understand why she did what she did. We both made mistakes. But too much time has passed. My heart now belongs to another. Sometimes forgiveness doesn't mean returning to the past." Mom nodded, wiping away tears. "I understand," she said quietly. "I've lost my chance. But maybe we could see each other sometimes? I want to at least try to fix what I've destroyed." Dad agreed, but said we all needed time. The next day, Dad invited Sarah over and told her everything. I was afraid of her reaction, but she showed incredible understanding. "Your ex-wife will always be a part of your life," she said. "And if you decide you want to maintain a relationship with her, I'll understand." Several months have passed now. Dad and Sarah are preparing for their wedding. Mom calls sometimes. We talk briefly. It's still awkward, but it's getting easier. And me? I'm still trying to understand how we got to this point. Why did Mom never talk about her problems? Why didn't I notice how hard it was for her? I've realized that life isn't black and white. People make mistakes, but they can also change. I'm proud that I helped Dad overcome cancer. I'm happy for his happiness with Sarah, and I'm trying to find a place in my heart for understanding and forgiving Mom. This story has taught me that sometimes the darkest night can lead to unexpected changes, that everyone deserves understanding, and that true love can appear when you least expect it. Our story isn't over yet, but I believe that many bright days await us ahead. Because now we know, the most important thing in life is not avoiding mistakes, but being able to forgive, understand, and value those who are close to us before it's too late.